Yeah, so welcome to Arena Church at the Table. This is episode 6, and we went through a trial period, and the overwhelming response was that they wanted more, which is great. It's my pleasure to today not necessarily have an interview, but it's a conversation with Lisa Harrison. I'll introduce Lisa in a moment, but it's great to welcome people who are watching or listening, pastors who we're connected to, and other leaders, and also, of course, people from Arena Church, our church, and it's always great to welcome everybody. In this episode, we're actually going to break it down into 2 episodes, and we're going to be talking about into the community. The reason behind this is that we, as a church, are ever passionate about engaging our community. Before I get to Lisa, I remember very clearly having an overwhelming sense that God was saying to me, not just to concentrate on pastoring the people who were in our services, which is wonderful, and we must do that as pastors, and people who are listening need to know that me as a pastor do love you guys who come to church and are in church. But the Lord specifically said to me that I was called to pastor the community. I suppose my challenge was, how do I do that? Because I come from a church background, I'm churched, but how do I engage and pastor the community? Which leads me into Lisa. Lisa is our community pastor. She also leads a campus, which is very much reaching into the community. It's wonderful. It's growing. Lisa's been on staff now for well over a decade. Part of that, she wasn't paid. She volunteered hours. She worked like she was full-time, unpaid. And in recent times, we've been able to honor her, which is important. So, Lisa, it's great to have you with us. I honestly don't feel like it's an interview. It's a conversation. Me and you have done loads of this stuff. To your phrase, rodeo. This rodeo is not new to us. But for those who don't know you well, just would you mind, with some filters, and I know you're always good at that, tell us a little bit about your past life and also what that now looks like in your present life and present journey.
Yeah, okay. So, as you already know, Kristian, I was born into a life of crime and drugs. And obviously with a lifestyle like that, where it's all crime and drugs, there's every kind of dysfunction, which there's no point in, citing all the dysfunction. No. But suffice it to say, there was just daily visits from my father's friends that was criminals. So all I knew was that. My father, he'd get arrested often. He'd serve long stints in prison. We was already poor, so that had plummeted us into more poverty, because even though he didn't provide legally, no, at least when he was there was a bit more on the table to when he wasn't. So that was the only life I knew. They was the only people I knew.
And that was all in Ilkeston. You was living in Ilkeston.
Yeah, Ilkeston, Cotmanay. The only kind of normal person I had in my life was my mama.
Right.
And she was kind of my stability. I used to sleep there often, and that gave you some kind of normality. But because I was born into that, I took all of that into my own adult life.
Right.
I'm not saying everybody does, but in that culture, a lot of us do.
Yeah.
Because you kind of are what you're raised in. It becomes part of you. You feel like it's in your DNA, in your genetics. So I only knew to act a certain way, be a certain way. So, I was quite aggressive. If I wanted something or didn't want something to happen, I could be quite aggressive. I provided for my family the way, my family provided for me. And long story short, all of my childhood, all of that dysfunction that I saw, that I witnessed, that I was raised in, that I took into my own adult life, resulted in my arrest.
Right. Yeah.
And I was the only one in my actual family that didn't have a criminal record. I just never got caught for things, basically. But it did result in my arrest. It was a very serious charge. I was looking at, maybe 12 years in prison. And it was from the cell that I turned to God and says, if you will get me out of this, if you will help me, and he's now my husband, but he was my partner then, if you will help me and my partner survive this, get out of this intact, because he was in hospital, he was losing his life. If you will give us another chance, what my actual words was, Kristian, if you will give us another chance, I promise you, God, I'll live right. I'll try to live right. I actually said to him from the cell, I don't know how to, because nobody had ever shown me how to live right, Kristian, except my mum or. I don't know how to, but I'm prepared to learn. And I did get out the cell. I was at a bail address. I wasn't allowed back into Ilkeston. It was a standing joke because I was the only one, barred out of Cotmanay, barred out of Ilkeston. But I had nothing to do. And so a cousin offered to take me to church. And that's how my church journey began.
I genuinely never tire of your story, the power of that story. Just remarkable. And obviously that was many years ago.
Yeah,
I don't know
19
years ago. And what I can say is over that journey that I've known you now, really over that journey, not quite 19 years, but it's not far off, that you really have kept your word and the journey that the Lord has taken you on, not just in what we want to get to in terms of what you do in the community, but just you as a person, as a Christian. It's just remarkable to see, it really is. So let me now jump a little bit, because your present journey, you carry a number of roles. I mean, we'll get to it, but what does that look like for you? I mean, are you enjoying yourself?
I am. I'm busy. So, it started off in Food Bank and then just evolved into, just various hats.
Yeah.
It's busy, it's challenging, but it's the call of God, and from day one, I never, ever felt that I was being offered a job. For me, if I'm honest, back then, because it's like 13 years ago, I didn't even understand about the call.
Yeah.
I was just trying to keep out of prison, keep out of trouble, keep myself straight with God.
Yeah.
So, I was working on all that for the first 7 years. I didn't understand the call. And you can only really say this to people that are born again, that would understand it. I just felt it from the depths of my soul.
Yeah. We'll come to that. I want to, because one of the things that we're passionate about, we talk about into the community, is that we have it's more than a phrase, actually. It's our mission, our vision. We want to go and grow, and we want to love and serve our world. And of course, the world is large. It's also very small, but it's also our immediate world.
Yeah.
And I suppose for me, that's where it started. I knew that I was called, going back to the call to come here, to pastor here. We was trying to just gather some momentum, and God was helpful, and there were some wonderful people and some nice foundations to build upon. But I suppose for me, it started not just with God saying, I want you to pastor the community, but when we started to have people knocking on the door who didn't have any food. And you know what I'm like. I mean, we'll come to it. When I saw little kiddies with nothing, I mean, I am a big softie with most things, but you get me there and I'm gone. So that's where it started with us. It always has to start somewhere. You hear a call and you start. But I suppose what I'm wanting to get to for people who are listening, and for pastors who are listening, you have to start somewhere. And how did it start for you getting involved, and how did you get involved?
Right. So you got up one Sunday in church and says you was tired. You was just tired of knowing kids was going to bed hungry, and we as a church and you as a leader needed to do something about
Yeah.
that. I mean, if I'm honest, there was no warning that was coming to the congregation.
No.
You just stood up,
No, there
and that's what
wasn't.
you said. And you says, you know, I intend on starting a food bank. I mean, you didn't have anything. There were no food. There were no nothing.
No.
I intend on starting a food bank. And
this was before they were trendy.
Yeah, well, there was none.
No.
There was none in our local area. There was none for probably 8 to 10 mile radius of us. And a lot of people, if I'm honest, had never even heard of them. Back then, I mean, most people have now, but they hadn't. So you just getting up and just saying, you know, I intend to start a food bank.
Yeah.
For some people out there, they had to think, what's a food bank? What is he doing? But then you says, or more to the point, what's he asking us to get involved in? He says, if anybody's interested in getting involved, would they come forward? Well, I've been saved 7 years because, as I said earlier, it took that long chipping off some of the bits before I could get involved in anything. Yeah. But because I'd come from that, because I'd been the child that had gone to bed with no tea, got holes in my shoes, no coat for school, I'd been that kid. I sat there and I thought, right, I went forward, and I'd never walked forward to the front of the church, ever. I tried to avoid that at all costs. And I walked forward. I didn't really know you then. I only knew you as the preacher. And I just says, Kristian, I'll give my life to something like that. I didn't know if there was ever going to be anything in church for me to get involved in because of all the dysfunction and all of that. I just thought, well, you know, kids ministry want for me.
Yeah.
All the things in church kind of, they just want to fit. I'd tried. I had little taster days, and I survived one, I think, 2 hour. So I never kind of thought there'd be a thing for me. And so I'd just like to take this moment just to say, if that's anybody that's listening, there's always a thing.
Yeah, there is.
For every person.
Very good. Very good.
But I says to you, I'll give my life to something like that. And you responded with, well, I'm glad you came forward, Lisa, because I was hoping you would, because I'd like you to lead it.
Yeah. How did that make you feel?
I just answered straight away, oh, no, I don't want to lead it.
No.
I'll pack your bags.
Yeah.
I'll do.
And that was
that.
a journey.
Yeah.
You was adamant, and I knew you weren't somebody to be forced, and it's just taking you on a journey. And of course, there were other people who you could say were outstanding candidates.
Yeah.
But I knew. So going back to the call, you just knew. Although I didn't know you well, I knew you enough, and it wasn't just your background. I just knew there was something that God wanted to do in you. And
that's a good point, Kristian. Sometimes in trusting as leaders, in trusting other people, they can see something in you, even your call, because you saw my call before I ever felt my call.
Of course, yeah.
I just heard kids are going to bed hungry. You want to start a food bank? Fine, I'll give my life to something like that. Yeah. But you saw the call.
Yeah. So we started, and Lisa, you were the catalyst with a team. You got at it. I cleared my office. You put plasterboard chairs. We started to get the bog off. Buy one, get one free's coming in. Packing bags. It evolved from there with the team, and it's grown and grown over the past decade or so. I love this quote by Simon Sinek. I think that's how you pronounce his surname. It's important for all of us. He says this, all organisations, you could put individuals, churches, charities, whatever, but all organisations start with why, but only the great ones keep their why clear year after year. So we started with our why people were going to bed hungry, particularly children. What are some of the ways that we've kept our why ever before us?
I think what helped that you had a big sign put up in every one of our buildings that says everybody is a somebody at Arena. And everybody is a somebody to God.
It's true.
And when you're wanting to keep the why before you, I think it's having a strap line or a vision statement or whatever it is for anybody else's church is massively helpful because it keeps it before the people when we're struggling of everybody is a somebody and keeping that why was everybody is a somebody to God.
And I love that you've said that. I mean, my take as well added to that would be that, you know, if you are the pastor, if you are the leader, You have to fight for budgets. You have to fight for personnel and put it towards that and be really intentional and determined. I mean, we'll come on to that, the costs to that, but it's immense. But, you know, I honestly think so for any pastors or leaders listening, watching, go over your budget, your expenditure, see where you spend it. That'll tell you where your why is. And for us, we made a very distinct, determined decision, haven't we? And we have kept that actually there are some things we love. Thankfully, we've got nice mics here. There's wonderful, but I know the guys would love more. But because of what we pour into the community, because we know that we're there to love and serve our world, it does take cost. Just give us a flavour. What are some of the things we do in our community? What are some of the things that we do now that we have done?
So we still do the first one, the food bank.
Yeah.
We have a furniture bank for people that can't afford, don't have any disposable income. Yeah. We do garden projects. Whether they're for the elderly, single mothers, single fathers. Yeah. They don't have a lawnmower, they can't just go out and mow the lawn. We do room or house refurbishments. Yeah. And because we have our own stock of furniture, because we take and collect donations, we're able to normally stock them with furniture. Because if it's an house refurb, it's not just because they want better wallpaper on the wall, Kristian. It's because they've got nothing. Yeah. They've got no setting.
Fled. Yeah. They could have fled.
Yeah. So we have cases brought to us by the local authorities, be it the social services or the council, where people have had to flee in the night, aided, but they're given keys to a property, and of course it's not furnished, there's no carpets, but they've had to flee. I had one lady that she'd fled with a 3-year-old. She'd had a nice big house, a job, she'd never known poverty, she'd never known it. But she was fleeing from domestic violence. Yeah. And a child literally had what she stood in. Christmas was fast approaching. So we was able to go in, help with that.
Wonderful.
So wonderful. we do garden projects at schools, garden projects at nursing homes. Yeah. Every so often through the year, through other initiatives that you might want to touch on. But what you encourage us to do, one called Serve Day, we'll go out, and this is everybody in the church, not just the community team. All the campuses are involved, everybody's involved in Serve Day. We'll go out, take goodies to the local fire brigade, the police station.
Just do stuff in the town, even basic things, litter picking, you know, all kinds of stuff. And then, of course, you know, one of the locations, because we're one church in many locations, you know, they identified a need with school uniform, wanted to make sure that kiddies had the right uniforms, the right shoes to go, and there's all those kinds. So there's a myriad of things that we actually do. So they're wonderful. But what are some of the challenges? Because we don't just want to gloss it up. We also need to say there are some challenges. Yeah.
So while you know we've cited just some, because that's not all. That's just some. And anybody listening could get excited thinking, you know, I'd love to help the children.
Yeah.
And I don't want this to come off wrong. I was that child, but the child normally comes with the parent that could have a lot of dysfunction around the life, or the child is an older child that's known nothing like same as I did, but dysfunction. And so you're not normally dealing with tidied up and orderly people, Kristian.
Good point.
And so as much as everybody will get behind children that are in need, you can't just get behind the child.
No.
There's also mum or dad or even grandparents. We have grandparents that have spent 17, 20 years in prison.
And it can be dark.
Very dark.
Yeah.
Very dark. So you've got addiction, you've got crime. And with some of that, with addiction or violence, comes a lot of other dark dysfunctions, which I wouldn't want to go into in this, but there's a lot of other dark dysfunctions that even the parents have been subjected to, and all the children. And so, you know, can be very emotionally draining.
Really, you've got to be willing to enter their world, haven't you? And of course, that we've had to do that in measurement. You've got great experience. I wouldn't have, but it's not, we don't have just people in the team who like yourself, who've come from that background. There are other people
No, but what I took from you, Kristian, because I do come from that, so I find it easier to go into them situations, but to keep my spiritual bearings and not be drawn back into any of that or respond kind for kind in any of that. For people that haven't had that background like you, what you bring to the table is a good old chunk of grace and truth. And because I'd sat under that, because I'd been around that, for the first time, I was able to go into what was my old culture, but armoured with grace and truth. I will speak truth. I will not tolerate you swearing at a team member or, you know, they warned when we go in. I just want a conversation about some guidelines. I don't want to see any... If there's any criminal activity, I'll be duty-bound, you know, to act. So these guidelines... So we're not, you know, soft and silly and unwise. But it's people... I had people on teams straight away that didn't come from my background. Because you can't just have people that know about... You have to have a measure of people that have, as you said earlier, been churched. So when you're facing that kind of darkness, they can help remind you of grace, truth, all the other things you need to go in.
And of course, what we're presently finding in today is that there's lots of different people who are coming to us from, you know, we've got people who are in work but aren't earning enough, you know, people who are fleeing, we've got people, you know, domestic violence, some of those, like you say, have had nice homes, as well as other people who are pretty habitual or cyclical. They've just been generationally in that. So again, for anybody listening, we have a massive broad spread, don't we, of people.
Most of those that you've just spoke about arrived. We've always had a small measure of those anyway, low income through work, but it was the COVID pandemic that drove masses that had got mortgages. Maybe some was self-employed and they was relying on just the partner's wage. So, you know, we've had nurses, firemen, police officers that's needed food bank.
It's incredible.
And we still do.
There's so much that we do there. I want to go to one question, but final question. Before I go there, you could be thinking, well, how have we been able to do all this? And we'll come into this in episode 2. It costs a lot of money to do it. But we set about partnering with others. Just talk to us quickly about the partnerships that we have and how we can create those. How did we find them? So
first of all, the first partnerships we created was partnerships where we were still giving out. So they was to the local schools, social services, you know, that could refer families and cases that they needed help with. But of course, the cost just kept increasing. But to be honest, once we'd started partnering with recognised organisations and other bodies like schools, social services, that lent itself more to the businessman or woman having confidence to get behind us, Kristian. So I started with you, because that's kind of one of your giftings, is the business world. That was nerve-wracking for me, to go into that with you. I've got more used to it now.
You do great,
but you had to get involved in that. And we just started setting up meetings with local business people. And we basically just did this. We told them how we started, where we've got to, and that if we wanted to continue this, other people within the community was going to have to start stepping up and helping their community. And so we got the first business that got involved and is still outstanding to this day. They introduced us to other businesses.
Absolutely.
And it's kind of gone from there.
Because what you have to be careful of is you pass judgment, don't you? Oh, the business people, they just take care of themselves. They don't.
No.
There's many who love where they live, love where their businesses are, employ people who are in the community and want to give back. but they're just looking for some places that they can have a confidence. That's what we've got to make sure. I think one of the things we've done is we've kept our word, we've lived with integrity, we've delivered on what we've said we're going to do. We've not overpromised and under-delivered. And I think all those kinds of things create that confidence, don't they, in the partnerships that we've had. And then, of course, our own people, our own congregation and we will come on. We'll bounce to that. One last question: what has sustained you over the years, especially when people, I will say it, can seem ungrateful or not always as grateful as you would like? Yeah,
so that can be challenging. And I'd say it's more challenging probably for people that don't come from that lifestyle, that come onto team and think, well, here I am. And the volunteers, I'm giving up my entire day. I've either cooked you a meal or I'm serving you a food parcel. And not only do you not seem, happy about it, you've actually got a bit of an attitude.
You're complaining about it.
I don't want pasta in the bag again. And it's all them kind of conversations. But what I remember and what I remind all the team, because, team come and go, some go into, other areas. I am very lucky. Our team does stay for quite a long time and does get a love of it. But I remember and I remind them that God sends his rain to the good and the bad. And it's remembering the basics of God loved us while we were still sinners. And I felt like, and still do to some degree, the ultimate sinner. I can share some of the people in the Bible with that. When they think they was, I'm like, no, I might have topped you, might have beat you. But I remind myself and I remind them, while I was at my darkest moment, now, yours might look different to mine, but there was a point, Kristian, even if you're churched or not, you had to come to Christ yourself.
Of course.
You had to repent of your own sin.
Absolutely.
You may not have been looking at 12 years. But like me, you were still looking at hell.
I was facing a life sentence of hell.
Without Christ. And so I think when people are ungrateful and you're not getting applauded for it, and there's some people plucking away at these things for years, and it's not even recognised anywhere. Nobody even knows that they're doing it. It's remembering that God loved us.
Absolutely, and reminding ourselves that whilst others may not see it, God sees it.
Exactly. And my experience has been, having done this 13 years in this particular area of food bank, I'd just like to remind everyone, if you've got that man or woman that could have been me and my brother that's moaning about, I had pasta last week, do I have to have pasta this week? Although we might not appear grateful, that person might be me in years to come, that gets saved, that gets redeemed, that gets a new start. But normally, Kristian, they've still got parents or a parent or grandparents, and they're always grateful. We've had emails, we've had letters, we've had cards sent to us saying, I can't help my Johnny or Jane
anymore
because they manipulate me, they bully me. A vast collection of reasons they can't. But I just want to thank you that you're there, that team's there, and that you are feeding or you are housing or clothing my Johnny or Jane. And it's remembering that. It's remembering that maybe that person isn't. But even if you send mum or dad back with a food parcel that they've moaned about, little Johnny or Jane, the child might be really grateful of tea that night.
Yeah, it's true. We're going to close now. We're going to go to another episode to just pick up the conversation. But as I close, I was just reminded of our summer series in the book of James. There are many churches who would say, and people, well, I know the words of God. But James was very clear, you can't just have the words of God, you've got to do the works of God. And faith without works is dead. And it's a real challenge to us to make sure, as James says, do not dishonour the poor. And make sure that we take care of the poor and the needy amongst us. So, for those in Arena Church, please listen carefully to what we're saying here. We're going to continue with the quest that the Lord has laid down to us to take care of those who are poor and needy. Please make sure that you pray for Lisa and the team. And it may be that you want to get involved. Then please just reach out to Lisa reach out to Arena Community. If you're further afield, please ping us an email, and we'd love to talk more with you. But I look forward till next time, Lisa. Thank you for your time with us. Yeah.